The National News Desk, locally covered, nationally connected.
We will shortchange the American public with no resources to make sure we find and safeguard our nation's capital right here in Washington, D.C., and bring anyone responsible for this heinous act of violence to justice.
A horrific act in the nation's capital against two National Guard members. What we are learning about the suspect as police try to understand the motive. Plus,
we must also be aware that Russia will not ease the pressure on us.
On the brink of peace, the United States' high-stakes move as a possible Ukraine-Russia deal takes shape. Plus,
we have to make sure that everyone who is going through the process is telling the truth on their applications.
Eye-shattering arrest records, why hundreds of thousands approved during the Biden years must now be interviewed again. From the nation's capital, this is the National News Desk, America's News. Now, thank you for being here with us. I'm Dee Gatton, and we begin with a tragedy in Washington, D.C., following a Wednesday shooting of two members of the National Guard.
Sarah Beckstrom of West Virginia, one of the guardsmen that we're talking about, highly respected, young, magnificent person, started service in June of 2023. Outstanding in every way. She's just passed away.
20-year-old Sarah Beckstrom succumbed to her injuries Thursday, a day after she and another member of the National Guard were shot. After the somber news was announced, several law enforcement agencies lined up along the streets as military and police vehicles escorted the body of the slain Guard member from the MedStar Washington Hospital Center. The second victim, 24-year-old Air Force Staff Sergeant Andrew Wolf, remains in critical condition, but officials say they're hopeful. The suspect, now confirmed to have worked with the CIA in Afghanistan. Our Kelly Gaskins reports on newly raised issues of vetting and re-vetting individuals who came to the U.S. after the 2021 Afghanistan withdrawal.
Immigration from Afghanistan to the United States placed on an immediate freeze after an Afghan national allegedly shot two National Guardsmen on Wednesday, just blocks from the White House.
We're not going to put up with these kind of assaults on law and order by people who shouldn't even be in our country.
CIA Director John Radcliffe confirming Thursday the suspect, 29-year-old Afghan Rahmanullah Lakanwal, worked with the CIA to support U.S. military units in Afghanistan. In a statement, Radcliffe explained the Biden administration justified bringing the alleged shooter to the United States in September 2021 due to his prior work with the U.S. government, including CIA. Lakanwal initially came to the U.S. under humanitarian parole as part of the Biden initiative called Operation Allies Welcome. Once in the U.S., he settled in Washington state with his wife and 5 kids. In 2024, he applied for asylum to remain in the U.S., which the Trump administration granted in April of 2025. In the months following the U.S. withdrawal, roughly 90,000 Afghans were brought to the U.S. Concerns over properly vetting all the individuals were raised at the time.
You said 100% of these evacuees are screened. Have they all been given in-person interviews per the normal process?
They have not all been given.
Why not?
Interviews because we have to be mindful of the fact that we were in an emergency situation.
On Wednesday, President Trump calling for an immediate and thorough review of the immigration process from Afghanistan.
We must now re-examine every single alien who has entered our country from Afghanistan under Biden, and we must take all necessary measures to ensure the removal of any alien from any country who does not belong here or add benefit to our country.
A recent Justice Department review finding the Biden administration did not properly vet all arrivals from Afghanistan after the withdrawal, with at least 8 individuals still appearing on federal terror watch lists. In Washington, I'm Kayla Gaskins reporting for the National News Desk, America's News Now. Continuing our coverage, earlier this week, I spoke with former FBI Executive Assistant Director and National Security Expert Chris Pihota about the investigation.
This is a huge scene in the center of a widely busy tourist area this time of year. What is the first step here to making sure none of the evidence is missed in this case?
Well, I'm sure that the FBI and the law enforcement partners cordoned off that area. They brought in their forensics teams and they sealed off that area from traffic, foot traffic, pedestrians, made sure that they collected all the information in a primary sweep. And then secondarily, they will be going around that area looking for passive surveillance equipment, collecting digital information and other types of data that they can add context.
And can only imagine there will be a lot of that with the proximity to the White House, as we mentioned. What kind of charges could this suspect face, especially since Mayor Bowser said this attack was targeted despite no confirmed motive?
Right. Initially, they're looking at assault on federal officers. And then the FBI moved into looking at this as a potential terrorist incident where they could gain access to additional authorities and tools to gather information and conduct a logical investigation on this individual and to make sure that this wasn't part of a networked attack or if there were any other attacks planned or instituted somewhere around the country.
You make a good point. This is obviously a fluid situation. As I mentioned, the motive not known, but according to initial reports from multiple news outlets, the suspect is an Afghan national. How important do you think that background will be in this case?
I think it's going to be very important because this individual entered the country under the previous administration's policy of evacuating Afghan nationals. And from what I understand from my intelligence community colleagues, the validation and vetting of those people was inconsistent to non-existent. So we don't know really who's here, and this individual could have come over here and been radicalized in place while in the United States. So the FBI and its law enforcement and intelligence partners are going to figure all that out here very shortly.
A lot of information to sort through on what has been a horrific day. Former FBI and national security expert Chris Pyhota, thank you for joining us on the National News Desk. The focus turning to Moscow as Russia considers Ukraine's peace plan. An aide to Russian President Vladimir Putin tells reporters the plan will be discussed when he meets with U.S. Special Envoy Steve Witkoff next week. According to the aide, Russian officials approve of some parts of a draft they've seen, while other sections are a serious problem. Ukraine wants security guarantees from the U.S.
I'm counting on further active cooperation with the American side and with President Trump. Much depends on America because it is American strength that Russia takes into account the most.
That said, Ukraine is tentatively on board with the plan. The Russian press secretary warning against jumping to conclusions regarding whether this will lead to the end of the war that began in February 2022. To Capitol Hill, where the apparent gridlock in Washington is pushing more lawmakers towards an early retirement, especially among the GOP, according to analysts. Some say Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene's surprising move to step down represents a growing resentment among Republican lawmakers, Axios reports. Many cite the recent government shutdown as a source of frustration, arguing House Speaker Mike Johnson has given all of their power to the executive branch. As of now, 41 lawmakers from both sides of the aisle have announced plans to quit at the end of their terms. As for President Trump, Congress now pushing back on some of his proposals and outright defying him in other ways. The most recent case is the White House's plan to extend health care subsidies for 2 years with stricter requirements on eligibility. This after Democrats demanded that during the shutdown. Republicans say they were never properly informed beforehand, forcing Trump to nix his plan for the time being. Here's Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent on where Trump wants to go.
I'm not involved in the conversation. I know President Trump wants working Americans to keep more of their money, cut out the insurance companies, and we'll see. He's the president of solutions, and I'm sure that we will have a solution to this.
Republicans also bugged Trump on the vote to force open the Epstein files before Trump supported the vote. The Environmental Protection Agency says it will provide states with $3 billion in funding to reduce lead in drinking water. The funds were originally allocated under the Biden-era Infrastructure and Jobs Act, which approved $15 billion to replace lead pipes and another over $11 billion for general drinking water infrastructure. The government stopped dispersing the funds as the result of an executive order President Trump signed on his first day back in office. Attorneys for accused Charlie Kirk assassin Tyler Robinson will will soon ask a judge to modify a gag order in the case that could potentially keep any witnesses from talking, including political leaders, many of whom have already made statements. One of those leaders includes Utah Governor Spencer Cox. In a news conference following Robinson's arrest, Governor Cox said in part, there is one person responsible for what happened here, and that person is now in custody and will be charged soon and will be held accountable. Just one of the comments Robinson's defense teams call prejudicial. Our station, KUTV in Salt Lake City, asks the governor about that claim.
Do you believe prejudicial public statements by government officials in any way jeopardize the state's ability to allow for a fair and impartial trial by comparison to other cases, other persons accused of serious crimes? And what precisely is the apparent need to offer up comments of guilt in this particular case pre-trial?
I don't have any concerns. No. Yeah.
One of Robinson's defense attorneys says they will file this motion before Robinson's January hearings. Coming up, the fight to stop the USDA's new SNAP guidelines that could strip funds overnight. And a special election in Tennessee now gaining national attention. The new poll is showing just how close the race is getting. Nearly 24 Democratic attorneys general are suing the USDA over changes to SNAP eligibility guidance for immigrants. The 21 attorneys general argue last month's USDA new guidance memo goes beyond what the law prescribes by declaring some refugees and those granted asylum ineligible for SNAP benefits. They also claim it could put significant financial strain on states that would have to shoulder the cost of fines. The USDA says it does not comment on pending litigation. A closely watched special House election in Tennessee is turning into a real nail-biter. New polling shows Republican Matt Van Epps leads Democrat Afton Bain by just 2 points in a district President Trump won by 22 percentage points last year. This race is also now generating national attention, not just because of the candidates, but also possible implications on next year's midterms. The National News Desk, Jeff Harris reports.
In recent weeks, Democrats have seen a surge in socialist and progressive victories, including Zohran Mamdani in New York City, also Katie Wilson in Seattle. A win for Bain, who's dubbed the, quote, AOC of Tennessee, wouldn't just flip a deep red congressional seat, but could also be a bellwether for more of these races come 2026. The race for Tennessee's 7th congressional district now generating national attention. On Truth Social, President Trump voicing his support for Republican Matt Van Epps, writing in part, quote, please vote for Matt, who has my complete and total endorsement. Trump loyalist and musician Kid Rock, who's involved with several bars in Nashville, also weighing in this week.
Let's keep Tennessee conservative. Let's keep it moving forward with people like Matt here, and let's not let these lunatics into our politics.
Meanwhile, former Vice President Kamala Harris attending a Get Out the Vote event in Tennessee last week to rally support for Bain, but did stop short of an endorsement.
Why am I here in Tennessee? Because I know the power is in the South.
Both parties have poured over $7 million into this election, a sign the race might be a lot closer than many expected, despite Republicans controlling the district since at least 2012. Recent polling from Emerson College showing Bain trailing Van Epps by only 2 points.
She wants higher taxes, more taxes to fund her socialist agenda. She's been endorsed by the Democratic Socialists of America.
The only reason that this race is even on the map is because people in Tennessee are feeling the pain of what's happening in Washington.
Now, the national attention also intensifying after a podcast clip resurfaced from 2020 where Bain can be heard bashing Nashville.
I hate country music. I hate all of the things that make Nashville, apparently, an it city to the rest of the country.
Comments she's since defended now less than a week until Election Day on December 2nd.
Instead of sitting on the sideline and complaining about it, I decided to run for office, and that's why I'm the state representative that represents downtown Nashville.
Now, the results of this special election could have a big impact on the balance of power in the House. If Bain wins and Democrats flip the district, it would lower the number of Republican seats down to 218, the exact number needed for a House majority. I'm Jeff Harris reporting from Washington.
U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement continues to break records for the number of people being arrested and the number of those being deported. That is a more aggressive approach is playing out in public and also behind the scenes. Christine Frizzau reports.
The immigration crackdown by the Trump administration continues to be carried out on the streets and in neighborhoods, with new records being set in both the number of those detained and the number of those arrested, an average of about 1,200 every day.
Under President Trump, we got rid of catch and release, right?
Yeah.
So everyone's talking about, oh my God, immigration, detention, skyrocketing, you have so many people in custody. Well, we're not going to just arrest someone to give you a chance to go out and do something again.
And for more than 200,000 people admitted to the United States as refugees, most will need to be re-interviewed, according to U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services, with the focus on those who came in between January 20th, 2021 and February 20th, 2025.
The way I look at it is the last 4 years, we saw unchecked mass illegal immigration. What we are trying to do is kind of unravel that knot now.
USCIS Director Joe Edlow says during the Biden administration, the program was being exploited.
We have to make sure that everyone who is going through the process is telling the truth on their applications, first and foremost, that they are not a threat to public safety, that they are not a threat to national security.
And you may remember scenes like this from 2023 of undocumented migrants spending days or even weeks in some U.S. airports. A brand new report just released by the Senate Commerce Committee alleges the Biden White House pressured Boston Logan, Chicago O'Hare, and at least 8 other airports to house those illegal migrants, despite concerns raised by airport officials. As far as the current immigration crackdown, ICE is deporting about 1,250 immigrants every day. Now, if that number held up, it would be more than 456,000 in a year. That is still less than half of the 1 million the Trump administration set as its goal. I'm Christine Frizzau for the National News Desk.
Data centers are popping up all over the country to keep up with the AI boom, but some of these facilities use as much electricity as an entire small city. Officials are raising the alarm, but nothing has been put in place to limit the growth. Let's go to Emma Withrow from the Fact Check team, and it sounds like, as we've been saying, capacity is a massive problem here. Just how much energy are we talking about being used?
Yeah, quite a bit. So the Pew Research Center, they put together a whole analysis on this, and they found that data centers used 183 terawatt hours of electricity in 2024. So what's the context on that? Well, it's about 4% of all U.S. power use per the International Energy Agency. Pew Research says that that's roughly the same amount of electricity consumed by the entire country of Pakistan, which is just like insane to think about.
It is. It's hard to even visualize, imagine exactly, and then factor in AI. How does this trickle down on Americans' power bills?
So all of this is centered around AI, I mean, for the most part. So a typical AI-focused hyperscale center uses as much power as 100,000 homes, and the new super facilities under construction right now could be, 20 times that per the IEA. And because these centers are clustered, like in Northern Virginia, they can eat up more than a quarter of a state's power supply, which means obviously higher electric bills for all of us. And Carnegie Mellon research says that national rates could rise by 8% by 2030 just from those data centers and the crypto mining alone.
All right, Emma, thank you so much. And for more on this Fact Check team topic, Emma's going to dig into other resources the AI boom is impacting aside from electricity. Coming up, the harrowing tale of a thrill seeker trapped on a cliff for hours and the life-saving rescue that followed. Then the new technology at the Las Vegas airport that's cutting security wait times for holiday travelers. National News Desk team of reporters is bringing you the headlines from coast to coast. We're taking the pulse of America, and we start in Nevada, where new airport technology is reducing security wait times for holiday travelers.
Tricia Christmas is flying to the Midwest with her husband and kids. And even as the Thanksgiving air travel pace picks up, they're already flying through the Terminal 3 security checkpoint. How would you rate this particular screening facility?
10 out of 10 for sure.
So much easier. When we pulled up, I was like, oh, we're going to be here forever. And it's been 5 minutes.
It's due in large part to what's called the Innovation Checkpoint at Terminal 3. It all began in 2019 as a partnership between TSA and the Clark County Department of Aviation to test new passenger screening technology, both hardware and software. Vendors can then use this real-world feedback to make changes before a large purchase is made.
See ya. Base jumping just outside of Moab on November 12th. Seconds into Scotty's jump, he was cliffed out.
I missed my left toggle, which is really the one that I want to be pulling to turn left.
Scotty hiked up to the area and was jumping by himself that day. He had 3 friends in the parking lot watching from below.
My initial worry was just falling further. I didn't know how stable I was on the cliff there. Turned out I was quite stable. I'm okay.
Scotty's phone was in his pocket. He used Siri to make a phone call to his friends who called for help.
Just breathe. Start getting frustrated. Just breathe.
The whole time leading up to it, I was able to be calmed down by my friends, just hear their voices, which was amazing, even when they weren't talking to me. And then the rescuers told me what they were doing through that call as well.
Scotty suffered a broken wrist and badly injured leg with the bone exposed, but not broken.
Signs of a brutal attack still scar the outside of Lee Vogler's private office in Danville. And the pain, he still feels it every day.
And I hurt pretty much every day, but I feel good. I feel good being here, and every day above ground is a good day.
A miracle, considering that it was just in July that he was doused with gasoline and set on fire. It left 60% of his body badly burned.
My family was told he's got severe infections in multiple parts of his body, he may not be here tomorrow.
But now Vogler is happy to say he is back doing what he loves and thriving.
Coming up next here, a listeria outbreak causing concern for consumers. The cheese products that could ruin your holiday weekend. And a drug fails to slow the progression of Alzheimer's. The popular ingredient experts were hoping would show results. Taking a look at the top trending stories on our website right now, dozens of people are dead in Hong Kong after a fire rips through multiple high-rise apartment buildings. It took more than a day for firefighters to get the fire under control. Pope Leo XIV has embarked on his first foreign visit. The pontiff began his 6-day trip with a visit to Turkey, with plans to travel to Lebanon after. Pope Leo said his trip is focused on unity and peace. And Chicago's Lincoln Park Zoo is celebrating its newest African penguin chick, and its name is Waddle. Love that name. The penguin chick was born October 1st. Those stories and more available right now at thenationaldesk.com. Novo Nordisk says a highly anticipated Alzheimer's drug failed in trial. The trial tested whether semaglutide, the key ingredient in the weight loss drugs Ozempic and Wegovy, can slow progression of the neurological disease. The pharmaceutical company says the results showed improvement in disease-related biomarkers, but did not slow progression. Shares of Novo Nordisk fell to a 4-year low in light of the news. And a recall for cheese products has been expanded over listeria concerns. They were distributed nationwide between November 3rd and the 20th. They include 4 and 8 ounce cups of Locatelli Pecorino Romano grated cheese, 6 ounce cup containers of Boar's Head labeled grated Pecorino Romano, and members mark Pecorino Romano in a 1.5 pound bag. You should throw out the cheese or return them for a refund. Still to come, both legal cases against Trump critics, James Comey and Letitia James, are dismissed. Could the judge's ruling leave the door open for new charges in the future? That answer ahead. You're watching the National News Desk, America's News Now. Catch us live weekdays from 6 a.m. to 11 a.m. and 10 p.m. to midnight Eastern Time, and anytime online at thenationaldesk.com. We'll be right back. The National News Desk, locally covered, nationally connected. Beef prices continue to skyrocket as the White House struggles to bring costs down. The latest blow to the affordability efforts.
The FBI has jurisdiction to look into any potential violations of federal offenses, and this definitely hits close enough to the mark.
The FBI now reaching out to 6 Democratic lawmakers following their controversial military warning about illegal orders.
It's out of control. The mayor is incompetent, and the governor is a big fat slob.
President Trump lashing out at top Chicago officials following a disturbing attack on a woman on board a train. From the nation's capital, this is the National News Desk, America's News. Now, thank you for being here with us. I'm Dee Gatton, and shoppers have been seeing meat prices climb all year, and one of the country's biggest suppliers is about to shut down one of its larger plants. As national correspondent Matt Gelka reports, the White House is struggling to find ways to bring down the costs.
The largest meat supplier in the U.S., Tyson Foods, is set to shut down one of its bigger meat processing plants in Lexington, Nebraska. Members of Congress in Nebraska have already criticized the decision. Senator Deb Fischer said she was extremely disappointed in the decision that would have a devastating impact on the community. Congressman Mike Flood said Tyson should try and help the roughly 3,000 people who could lose their jobs.
Work with our food producers and livestock owners. Let's make this plant in Lexington work for another company so that we can keep the jobs that we built.
The closure comes as beef prices are at record highs. The average price of ground beef in September was $6.32. That's up from $5.54 in January when Donald Trump took office. The president has pressured meat packers to lower meat prices and directed the Department of Justice to investigate meat packing companies, accusing them of collusion, price fixing, and price manipulation. His Treasury Secretary partly blamed the Biden administration's immigration policies for the rising prices.
Because of the mass immigration, a disease that we've been rid of in North America made its way up through South America. As these migrants, they brought some of their cattle with them. So part of the problem is we've had to shut the border to Mexican beef.
The price of beef has become a political problem, adding to the cost of living challenges faced by Americans. The Trump administration recently removed 40% tariffs from Brazilian coffee, cocoa, and beef while attempting to tackle the affordability crisis. The administration also announced a plan last month to import more beef from Argentina in an effort to lower prices. There is no apparent quick fix. Droughts have left American cattle supply at its lowest number in 70 years, and demand is still very high. Some industry experts predict ground beef could hit $10 a pound in 2026, with no relief until 2027. Reporting in Washington, I'm Matt Gelka for the National News Desk, America's News Now.
Mortgage rates in the U.S. dipped a bit last week after 3 straight weeks of increases. The average rate for a 30-year mortgage fell to 6.23%. That's according to Freddie Mac, and that's down from nearly 6.3% last week. The average is still much lower than a year ago when rates were over 6.8%. Lowering the cost of prescription drugs has been a top priority for the Trump administration, and they're touting their latest round of negotiated prices. 15 drugs are involved, including those used to treat asthma, cancer, and depression. The Inflation Reduction Act, signed into law by former President Biden, authorized Medicare to negotiate prices for certain drugs for the first time. It's a resource the Trump administration is now using to lessen the gap between what Americans and what those in other countries pay for the same drug.
We are funding the research and development for the world. We should not be paying all the lion's share of this R&D work without other countries chipping in.
The new prices go into effect in 2027. A judge is allowing North Carolina to use a redrawn congressional map, likely to flip a U.S. House seat to Republicans. In the meantime, Indiana state legislators are preparing to convene next week to discuss carving out more red districts for Republicans. This despite the state Senate leaders saying there's no votes in support for a mid-cycle district redraw. President Trump is pressuring state Republicans on the issue while praising news of state lawmakers reconvening. However, not every Republican is on board with gerrymandering, including those at Danger in California, where Democrats are taking reciprocal measures to Texas Republicans gerrymandering.
All of this is just so unnecessary. It's just completely needless chaos that is really undermining representation in states across the country, and I think serving to just further the disillusionment that a lot of people have with our political process.
Congressman Kevin KEYE there, who is at risk of possibly having his red seat turn blue in California's redistricting push. The FBI is working to schedule interviews with the 6 Democratic lawmakers who posted a video urging service members not to follow illegal orders. This comes after the Pentagon says they are investigating Senator Mark Kelly, a retired Navy captain who could potentially face court-martial proceedings. The National News Desk, Jeff Harris, has more.
The Pentagon announcing this week its investigation into Kelly, a retired Navy pilot, surrounds possible breaches of military law. Details about these new interviews were not immediately clear, but does signal a possible probe could be coming into the matter. The controversial video was posted on social media last week. 6 Democratic lawmakers, including Senators Mark Kelly and Alyssa Slotkin, urging service members not to comply with illegal orders.
Our laws are clear. You can refuse illegal orders.
You can refuse illegal orders.
You must refuse illegal orders.
In response, President Trump taking to Truth Social, writing the lawmaker should be arrested and tried for, quote, seditious behavior punishable by death. FBI Director Kash Patel saying interviews will determine if an investigation is needed.
Is there a lawful predicate to open up an inquiry and investigation, or is there not? And that decision will be made by the career agents and analysts here at the FBI.
All 6 lawmakers confirming the FBI did contact the House or Senate sergeants at arms requesting interviews. The House members involved releasing a joint statement, including Colorado Representative Jason Crow, writing in part, quote, President Trump is using the FBI as a tool to intimidate and harass members of Congress. Meanwhile, Slotkin was asked directly this week if she believes President Trump has issued any illegal orders. Her response?
I am not aware of things that are illegal, but certainly there are some legal gymnastics that are going on with these Caribbean strikes.
Now, the interviews come shortly after the Pentagon announced it's opening an investigation into Kelly over violations of military law. But Kelly pushing back against Trump and the administration, saying he won't back down.
He doesn't want accountability. But, Rachel, I'm not going to be silenced. I'm not going to be intimidated.
Federal criminal defense attorney Ron Chapman tells us the FBI does have jurisdiction to look into any potential violations of federal offenses.
This is a very dangerous action when coming from people in a position of power because it relates to over 1 million service members.
And under the Uniform Code of Military Justice, service members are required to follow the laws of the United States. Chapman saying the video by these lawmakers could be considered conspiracy.
Then you really get into a situation where you have individuals who have conspired to cause people potentially to violate the Uniform Code of Military Justice. That is obstruction of justice, plain and simple.
Now, in a letter written Tuesday, Secretary of War Pete Hegseth is also ordering the Navy to assess Kelly's comments in that video and deliver a report back to him, setting a deadline of December 10th to do so. I'm Jeff Harris reporting from Washington.
The Supreme Court is blocking President Trump from firing a top Library of Congress official. The ruling means that Shira Perlmutter will remain the director of the U.S. Copyright Office for now. It defers a decision on Trump's emergency appeal until a pair of related cases are litigated. The Supreme Court has repeatedly allowed the president to temporarily remove and therefore control agencies on the periphery of the executive branch. This case had a twist, as the government entity Perlmutter works for contains the word Congress. Chicago is in the national spotlight again for crime concerns after a woman is set on fire. National correspondent Kaylee Gaskins reports.
President Trump zeroing in on the governor of Illinois and the mayor of Chicago.
It's out of control. The mayor is incompetent, and the governor is a big fat slob.
The heavy criticism following news of a 26-year-old woman set on fire while riding a public train. The man accused of the crime, Lawrence Reed, has been arrested 72 times. 8 of those are felony convictions.
They burned this beautiful woman riding in a train. A man was arrested 72 times, and they'll let him out again. The liberal judges will let him out again.
In August, a Cook County judge released Reed even after he allegedly hit a social worker so hard he knocked her out.
It is the judgment of those elected judges that ultimately determines in most cases whether somebody is released or not. And it's a better way, by the way, than bail. Because bail is sort of an automatic out for people who just happen to have enough money.
Trump's criticism comes off the heels of another violent weekend for Chicago, where at least 8 teens were shot, all between the ages of 13 and 17 years old. A 14-year-old died. A Democratic alderman for Chicago, Raymond Lopez, blames Chicago Mayor Brandon Johnson.
All of these failures come right back to his doorstep. The blood is on his hands.
Lopez saying the mayor and Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker should take Trump up on his offer to send in the National Guard to clean up crime.
What we've seen is more compassion and empathy from Donald Trump wanting to correct this than we've gotten from our own mayor.
So Governor Pritzker, if you're listening, let's get your act together. Invite us in. We're going to make your place so safe.
The governor and mayor have both sharply opposed the sending of federal troops to Chicago, as Trump did in the nation's capital. In Washington, I'm Kayla Gaskins, reporting for the National News Desk, America's News Now.
We talk a lot about AI power needs, but a new Pew Research analysis shows data centers are also using massive amounts of water and changing how utilities plan for the future. Let's go to Emma Withrow from the Fact Check team, already having a transformative effect to the nation as we know it.
Yeah, absolutely.
What else did this report find?
So it really just highlighted the sheer volume of natural resources that these data centers need to keep running, and electricity really is just the tip of the iceberg. I mean, the report, citing federal estimates, says data centers used 17 billion gallons of water in 2023, mostly from those hyperscale operators that were cooling the heat-intensive AI servers. And then by 2028, that number could hit 33 billion gallons a year, which is just unbelievable.
And there have been concerns about the environment.
Yeah.
What do Americans think on average?
So it sounds like the public's a little bit split. The Pew Research Center, they did a poll on all of this, and they found that 25% think AI will hurt the environment, 20% think it'll help, 30% say they're just kind of not sure. And then part of that uncertainty really comes from exactly what we're talking about, those huge energy needs, the huge water needs, and a future that's really still unknown. Just, you know, trying to measure how fast this is going to grow and how it's going to impact our environment. meant
and
a lot
the
of different ways.
Yeah, exactly. And the AI race has not slowed down one bit.
Right.
So we will watch this closely. Emma, thank you so much.
Thanks.
And for more on this Fact Sheet Team topic, including links to their sources, scan the QR code or visit thenationaldesk.com. Coming up, an asteroid is heading Earth's way and could hit the moon. The plan's now in motion to prevent a disaster. The indictments against former FBI Director James Comey and New York Attorney General Letitia James have been dismissed. Earlier this week, I spoke with former U.S. Attorney John Fishwick to break down the ruling and what comes next. The judge said, as you know, John, the appointment of the U.S. attorney was illegal, adding Lindsay Halligan was unlawfully appointed. The administration is refuting that. In any case, the Trump administration can still appeal, which it says it plans to do, right?
Absolutely, Dee Dee. The DOJ will appeal to what's called the Fourth Circuit Court of Appeals in Richmond. They'll do that probably right away. And remember, whoever loses at the Fourth Circuit Court of Appeals is likely to appeal to the Supreme Court. This is a case that they'll want to hear. This deals with separation of powers and the power of judges versus DOJ and whether Halligan was validly appointed or not. So this case is headed to the Supreme Court for both James and Comey.
Well, Comey was indicted, as you know, just days before the 5-year statute of limitations in his case expires, so timing was really critical. If the statute of limitation has expired, can they still file a second case? It sounds like you're saying yes.
They can. In fact, there's a catch-all law that protects DOJ in these circumstances. Once the appeals have run, even if the Supreme Court says the judge was correct in saying that Halligan was not validly appointed and the charges could be dismissed, there's a catch-all statute that will give DOJ 60 more days after the Supreme Court decision to re-indict Comey, and therefore it wouldn't be in violation of the statute of limitations. This saving statute will protect them in this situation, so the case would not be time-barred against Comey at all.
Are there any similar protections with regard to Letitia James's case? I mean, obviously very different, but to my knowledge, there was no statute of limitations with regard to the mortgage fraud charges here.
Yeah, Letitia James is basically piggybacking off the Comey case. There's no statute of limitations that's pending in her case. So the charges against her, they could go forward now and re-indict her. I expect, though, they're going to appeal this decision. DOJ is going to say that Halligan was validly appointed. But regardless, at the end of the line at the Supreme Court, I expect that they're going to re-indict James within 60 days of that Supreme Court decision.
All right, we'll wait and see. Thank you, as always, for your time. If I don't see you, happy Thanksgiving. Former U.S. Attorney John Fishwick joining us tonight on the National News Desk.
Thank you.
The U.S.'s top cybersecurity agency is warning Americans about an increase in cyber intrusions using spyware. They're targeting various messaging apps. Hackers are using techniques like phishing and malicious device linking QR codes that are connected to accounts controlled by the attackers. They're also using zero-click exploits, which are vulnerabilities in messaging apps that are not known by the firms that own the apps. Experts advise using end-to-end encrypted communications. The Justice Department has now asked a judge for permission to publicly release documents gathered during the investigations into Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell. The DOJ wants to release financial records, travel documents, and notes of victims' interviews. Officials said they would redact any personally identifying information of victims. It's unclear how much new material will be included in the files the Department of Justice is requesting to release. An asteroid is heading Earth's way and could hit the moon, and the world's top scientists are now working on a plot to potentially blow it off course. As national correspondent Matt Galko reports, NASA's scenarios sound more like a movie plot.
It might not be a big chance, but there's still a chance an asteroid could hit the moon in 2032. NASA has the probability at around 4% right now that asteroid YR4 has a lunar impact.
It's an asteroid, sir.
How big are we talking?
It's the size of Texas, Mr. President.
This one isn't the size of Texas, but if you immediately thought about the movies where they go into space to try and blow up the flying rock and save the world, you're not far off. A recent paper compiled by researchers, including NASA scientists, explored the possibilities of potentially using a nuclear explosion to move the asteroid out of the way or blow it up if it becomes a real threat. YR4 was dubbed a city killer when there was a small chance it could hit Earth, but that's almost been entirely ruled out.
I think that we are concerned because it is our responsibility to keep track of these objects and to understand what's going to happen.
Christina Thomas is an associate professor of astronomy and planetary science at Northern Arizona University. She's also a part of NASA's DART, or Double Asteroid Redirection Test Team, a group that sits on the front lines of planetary defense. She says there's not much to worry about if this asteroid does end up hitting the moon. It could even create a cool-looking meteor shower. But YR4 could provide the most intense test yet for how Earth might respond to an asteroid that was on track to hit the planet.
If you know about something far enough in advance, so years, potentially even decades, you just need to give it a very small nudge, relatively speaking, to make a really big change over a period of time. And so if you're able to do that, then that object would miss the Earth entirely.
The asteroid is out of view right now, but scientists should be able to see it again in February with the James Webb Telescope. Depending on what they see, the odds of hitting the moon could go down or they could increase dramatically. Reporting in Washington, I'm Matt Gelka for the National News Desk, America's News Now.
Up next, putting a stop to sophisticated scams this holiday season, how hackers are using AI to target not only shoppers, but major retailers as well. This is the National News Desk, America's News Now. We have reporters all across the country in your neighborhoods covering issues that matter to you. We are taking the pulse of America, and we start in Virginia, where experts are warning about scams targeting holiday shoppers.
Packed stores, packed sidewalks, and packed shopping bags with Black Friday only days away.
Usually we stay home. We do some online shopping.
And while that may be more convenient,
you may be getting some emails for super duper deals.
This Virginia Tech computer science professor says to never trust an email or text from what may look like a retailer, but is really just a scammer trying to take advantage of eager shoppers.
Don't trust emails by itself. Definitely go to the website yourself. Don't click on the links.
He says artificial intelligence, for example, has made it harder to tell what's real or what's fake. And all the more reason to stay vigilant, especially for seniors, who he says are targeted most by scammers.
As they gathered to celebrate a man who accomplished so much and served so many, the son of Lenny Wilkins showed how much his passing has affected those who loved him.
Give the Wilkins family grace as we struggle to get over this great loss.
Randy Wilkins says his father was deeply committed to improving the lives of youth, and the Odessa Brown Children's Clinic held a special place in his heart. The clinic is part of Seattle Children's Hospital, and the Lenny Wilkins Foundation has donated millions of dollars over the years. Wilkins played in the NBA for 15 seasons, including 4 with the Seattle Supersonics. He was a 9-time NBA All-Star who turned to coaching and helped the Sonics win the championship in 1979.
Nhi Lin here behind me is one of the giant Asian elephants here at the National Zoo, and she is expecting her first calf. This will be the first elephant birth here at the National Zoo in nearly 3 decades, and staff say they are cautiously optimistic she'll deliver a healthy baby between mid-January and early March. Asian elephants are critically endangered. Fewer than 50,000 remain in the wild.
It's the first time in over 25 years that we've had this sort of excitement for our elephant program. Elephant births are extremely rare and important for the species, and to finally be able to share that with our visitors and our guests is pretty exciting.
Coming up next here on the National News Desk, a pillar of the civil rights movement now more protected than ever. A new addition to a public memorial celebrating the life and legacy of Emmett Till. And a major flaw in Earth's atmosphere gets a little smaller. The climate change effort scientists credit for the repairs. One of the darkest moments in U.S. history is now being preserved. The Emmett Till Interpretive Center bought the barn where Till was brutally beaten and killed in 1955. Two men abducted and killed Till after the 14-year-old was falsely accused of flirting with a white woman in Mississippi. His murder helped galvanize the civil rights movement. The center says the barn will be part of a larger memorial by the 75th anniversary of his death in 2030. And Jakarta, Indonesia, is now the world's largest city. The United Nations says it moved past Tokyo with a population of nearly 42 million residents. The Indonesian capital soared from 33rd place in the previous rankings in 2018 to claim the top spot. The second largest city is Dhaka and then Tokyo. Cairo, Egypt is the only city among the top 10 largest cities not located in Asia. And the ozone hole above the Antarctic is showing progress. Scientists say the hole in the ozone layer is shrinking. It's the fifth smallest hole on record since 1992. NASA and NOAA say international efforts stemming from the landmark 1987 Montreal Protocol are responsible for the shrinkage, which involves phasing out ozone-depleting chemicals. Scientists believe the hole could recover by 2066. That'll be all for us on the weekend edition of the National News Desk, America's News. Now, don't forget, you can catch us live from 6 a.m. to 11 a.m. and 10 p.m. to midnight Eastern Time. Check our local listings, and you can also watch us online and catch up with the latest headlines on thenationaldesk.com. Thanks for watching the weekend edition. We wish you a very happy holiday weekend. I'm Dee Dee Gatton here in Washington. From all of us here, have a great week.